The Land Before Time. This film has been described for blind and visually impaired audiences by descriptive video service WGBH Boston. Described by Robin Sitton. Descriptions read by Chloe Lehman. Major funding for DVS is provided by the United States Department of Education. For more information about DVS, call toll-free 1-800-333-1203 or write to our email address dvs@wgbh.org. Credits: directed by Don Bluth, produced by Sullivan Bluth Studios Ireland Limited. Producers: Don Bluth, Gary Goldman, John Pomeroy. Executive producers: Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. Co-executive producers: Frank Marshall and Kathleen Kennedy. Music composed by James Horner. If We Hold On Together, music and words by James Horner and Will Jennings. Produced by Peter Asher. Performed by Diana Ross. With the voice talents of Judith Barcy as Ducky, Burke Burns as Daddy Tops, Gabriel Damon as Littlefoot, Bill Irwin as Grandfather, Pat Hingle as narrator and Rooter, Candy Hudson as Sarah, Will Ryan as Petrie, Helen Shaver as Littlefoot's mother. Screenplay by Stu Krieger. Story by Judy Freudberg and Tony Geiss. Production designer Don Bluth. Supervising executive for Sullivan Bluth Studios Ireland Limited, Morris F. Sullivan. Production manager Thad Wineland. Production supervisor Kathy J. Carr. Film editors Dan Molina and John K. Carr. Storyboard Don Bluth, Larry Lecker, and Dan Kunster. Assistant directors G. Sue Shakespeare, David Steinberg, and Russell Boland. Layout supervisor David Getz. Layout artists Rick Bentham, Mark Swanson, Mark Swan, and Richard Faudrey. Background stylist Don Moore. Background artists Barry Atkinson, Sonny Pinchapong, Carl Jones, Mannix Bennett, and David McCamley. Directing animators John Pomeroy, Dan Kunster, Linda Miller, Lorna Pomeroy, Ralph Zondag, and Dick Zondag. The animators Anne-Marie Bardwell, Victoria Brewster, Cullum Duggan, Ken Duncan, Jeff Eder, Mark Fisher, Michelle Gagne, Raul Garcia, Patrick Gleason, Kent Hammerstrong, T. Daniel Hofstede, John Hopper, Skip Jones, Jean Morel, Paul Newberry, Ralph Palmer, Gary Perkovac, and John Power. Special effects directing animator Dorce A. Lanfer. Special effects animators David Bossert, Kathleen Quaife Hodge, Tom Hush, Diane Landau, Joey Mildenberger, Steve Moore, Don Paul, Bob Simmons, and David Tidgwell. Character Key Supervisor Vera Lanfer. Character Key Assistants Ben Burgess, Nola Crombie, Edward Goral, Anne Heaney, Sylvia Hofnagels, Helen Lawler, Marion Mathau, Ashley McGovern, Mark Pudliner, Terry Shakespeare, Rusty Stoll, Jeff Topping, Wendo Van Essen, and Sally Voorheis. Rough Assistant Animation Supervisor Kathy Jones. Animation Checking Carla Washburn, Lisa Joko, Pam Clayman, Mary Walsh, and Michelle McKenna. Final Checking Saskia Ravori and Robin Police. Key Color Stylists Carmen Oliver and Susan Vanderhorst. Color Stylists Laurie Curran, Violet McKenna, Donald Freeney, and Suzanne O'Reilly. Special Effects Painting Shirley Sam Mapes. Production Camera Optical Effects Supervisor Jim Mann SOC. Animation Camera David R. Anke, Aidan Farrell, John Fitzgerald, Gary Hall, Gary Jones, Emer Joyce, Scott McCarter, Fiona Mackle, Emma Miller, Kieran Morris, John O'Flaherty, Etna Quinn, Eric Ryan, Rocky Solitoff, and Graham Tiernan. Xerography Supervisor Terry Eddings. Supervisor Xerox Checking Daryl Karstensen. Paint Lab Supervisor Deborah Rykoff. Cell Painting Supervisor Olga Taryn Craig. Color Markup Supervisor Nancy Levy Bossert. Inking Supervisor Jacqueline Hooks. Voices in order of appearance: Pat Hingle as narrator, Helen Shaver as Littlefoot's mother, Gabriel Damon as Littlefoot, Bill Irwin as grandfather, Candy Hudson as Sarah, Burke Burns as Daddy Tops, Pat Hingle as Rooter, Judith Barcy as Ducky, Will Ryan as Petrie. Casting by Nancy Nair. Associate producer Deborah Jellen Newmeyer. Story consultants Brent Maddock and Steve Wilson. Additional character animation: Charlie Bonifacio, Jesse Cosio, John Hill, Sylvia Hofnagels, Fernando Moro, Wendy Perdue, Mark Pudliner, David Simmons, Conrad Winterlich, Kevin Werzer. Apprentice Assistant Directors, Moya Mackle and Nuala O'Toole. Scene Planning, Russell Boland, Aaron O'Reilly and David Steinberg. Apprentice Scene Planners, Sean Dempsey and Kip Goldman. Assistant Film Editors, Thomas V. Moss and Fiona N. Traylor. Assistant Layout, Elizabeth Byrne, Fred Riley and Thomas Daly. Special Effects In-Betweeners, Orla Madden, James Mansfield Jr., Jeanette Owens, John O'Neill, Connor Thunder, Garrett Wren, Peter Matheson. Rough In-Between Assistant Supervisor, Tamara Anderson. Rough Breakdown Assistants, Donakada Daly, Hope Devlin, John Eddings, Edward Gribben, Tom Higgins, Noel P. Kiernan, Sandra Ryan, Greg Tiernan. Rough Animation In-Betweeners, Jane Anderson, Peter Anderson, Leslie Ost, Paul Bolger, David Cribben, Stephen Cullen, Fran Doyle, Robert Fox, David Groom, Martin Hanley, Roisin Hunt, and Jer O'Carroll. Character Cleanup, Annette Byrne, Michael Carey, Michael Cassidy, Eileen Conway, Paul Daly, Dennis Deegan, Mary Delaney, Peter Donnelly, Sylvia Fitzpatrick, Alan Fleming, Connor Flynn, Michael Gary, Paul M. Kelly, Paul Kelly, Michael Kiley, Giorgio Mardigan, Anne McCormick, Margaret McKenna, Brian McSweeney, Anne-Marie Mockler, Julie Molina, Dimpna O'Halloran, Tara O'Reilly, Terry Pike, John A. Power, Miriam Reed, Julia Ryan, Paul Shanahan, and Hugh Tatton. Assistant Xerography Supervisor, Michael Murray. Key Xerography Processors, Robert Byrne, Gerard Gogan, and Jean Dower. Xerography Processors, Mary Boylan, Gerard Carty, Pierce Cullinane, Emmett Doyle, Patrick Duffy, Wayne Farrer, Yvonne McSweeney, Dimpna Murray, Colette O'Brien, Siobhan O'Brien, Pater O'Reilly, and Kieran White. Xerography Checkers, John Finnegan, Brendan Harris, Gillian Hunt, Stuart Johnstone, Caroline Lynch, Paul Roy, and Pauline Walsh. Markup, Sarah Jane King and Maria Farrell. Inkers, Anne Hazard, Karen Stover, and Kerry Swanson. Apprentice Inkers, Madeline Downs, Karen Dwyer, Martine Finucane, Mary Gavin, Surcha Nee Cheeman, and Kenneth Slevin. Paint Lab Assistant Supervisor, Brenda McGurk. Paint Lab Mix and Match, Damian Murphy, Melanie Strickland, Andrew Malloy, Christine Flusky, Noreen Dunn, Tracy Arundel. Cell Paint Assistant Supervisor, Neve McLean. Cell Painters, Adrienne Bell, Brian Boylan, Ann Brennan, John Brennan, Maureen Buggy, Melanie Burke, Mark Byrne, Michael Carroll, Yvonne Carthy, Vincent Clark, Nicholas Connolly, Mary Connors, Lisa Corcoran, Connor Coughlin, Orla Coughlin, Brian Doyle, Gloria Dunn, Franca Elston, Tom English, Linda Fitzpatrick, Jim Fleming, Claire Gallagher, Philip Gary, Fiona Gavin, Fiona Ginnell, Patricia Gordon, Catherine Gurry, Liam Hannon, Carl Hayes, Liam Hoban, Gary Kelligan, Sheila Kelly, Siobhan Larkin, Piers Love, Maria Malone, Joseph Manifold Jr., Petula Masterson, Anne May, Colin McGrath, Geraldine McGuinness, Ian McLaughlin, Kate Meredith, Pauline Morahan, Josephine Mulroney, Mary B. Mulvihill, Moira Murphy, John Murphy, David Nolan, Philip O'Connor, Breed O'Donnell, Paul O'Rourke, John Phelan, Julie Phelan, Gerard J.D. Phillips, Eileen Ridgway, Carrie Rumgay, Colum Slevin, Karen Somerville, Jan Stokes, and Iseult Travers. Paint Checkers, Michael Casey, Gerard Coleman, Sinead Murray, Helen O'Flynn. Apprentice Special Effects Painters, Magella Burns, Jill Coughlin, Elaine Woods. Apprentice Final Checkers, Mary Boyle and Lucy Melia. Cell Service, Anne-Marie Daly, Martina McCarran, Nina Phipps, and Aoife Woodlock. Optical Technicians, Caroline Gaynor and Liam Halpin. Supervising Systems Engineer, Carl Bredendiek. Engineering, Neil Cavani. Music and Post-Production Executive, Roy Simpson. Music performed by London Symphony Orchestra, London, England. King's College School Choir, the choristers of St. Paul's Cathedral and Ladies' Chorus. Choral Director, Nick Curtis. Orchestrations, Greg McRitchie. Music Copyist, Vic Fraser. Music Recording, Sean Murphy. Music Editor, Jim Henriksen. Assistant Music Editor, Andrew Glenn. ADR Dialogue Engineer, Charlene Richards. ADR Recordist, Tom O'Connell. Supervising Re-Recording Mixer, Bill Rowe. Re-Recording Mixer, Ray Marin. Assistant Re-Recording Mixer, John Felsini. Supervising Sound Editor, Dan Molina. Sound Editors, Kevin Brazer and Ian Fuller. Assistant Sound Editors, Joe Gallagher and Andy Steers. Foley by TAJ Soundworks. Foley Artists, Dan O'Connell and Alicia Stevenson. Foley Mixer, Jim Ashwill. Foley Recordist, Mary Jo Lang. Color Timer, John Stanborough. Negative Cutting, Donna Bassett and Kathy Carr. Studio Operations, Fred Craig. Assistant to Mr. Sullivan, Andrew Fitzpatrick. Personnel Manager, Nora Farrell. Personnel Officer, Annabelle Conway. U.S. Personnel Officer, Ed Oliver. Amblin Controller, Bonnie Radford. Production Accountant, Rachel W. Layton. Assistants to Accountant, Susan Landers and Marie McGrath. Payroll Master, Bernadette O'Connor. Corporate Accounts, Karen Dent. Corporate Accounts Assistant, Margaret Connell. Purchasing Manager, Vincent Carrick. Purchasing Assistant, Elish Mulligan. Publicist, Sean Carberry. Publicity Assistant, Veronica Carroll. Secretary to Mr. Goldman, Cynthia L. Ankney. Production Secretary, Kira O'Donnell. Assistant to Mr. Marshall, Mary Radford. Secretary to Mr. Sullivan, Helen Mahoney. Management Secretary, Ann Costello. Personnel Secretaries, Etna Agnew and Yvonne Costello. Production Coordinator, Ken Cromar. Production DP, Fiona Keating. Production Assistants, Olivia McLean, Deborah Morgan, and Carolyn Warren. Engineering Assistant, John Henry. Transportation, Peter Morgan, Peter O'Toole, and John Vallone. Office Manager USA, Helene Blitz. Camera Stand Engineering, Mechanical Concepts Incorporated. Camera Computer, Cinetron Computer Systems Incorporated. Cell Paint Laboratory, Art Color Products. Studio Facilities, Sullivan Bluth Studios Ireland Limited, Dublin, Ireland. Optical Effects, Sullivan Bluth Studios Ireland. Optical Film Effects Limited. Dialogue recorded at B&B Sound Studios, Universal Studios, and Warner Hollywood Studios. ADR recording, Goldwyn Sound and Todd A.O. Music recorded at EMI Abbey Road Studios, London, England. Re-recording at Canon Elstree Studios, Boreham Wood, England. Special thanks to the Industrial Development Authority of Ireland. Dolby Stereo in selected theaters. Original soundtrack available on MCA Records, compact discs and cassettes. Color by Technicolor. This motion picture photoplay and soundtrack are protected pursuant to the provisions of the laws of the United States of America and other countries. Any unauthorized duplication and/or distribution of the photoplay and/or soundtrack may result in civil liability and criminal prosecution. Number 29372, Motion Picture Association of America. Copyright 1988, Universal City Studios Incorporated and U-Drive Productions Incorporated. All rights reserved. A logo, an animated leaf falls onto a golden pond. Ripples form the words, "A Don Bluth Film." Produced by Sullivan Bluth Studios. Our view zooms back from a brilliant full moon. A logo appears in silhouette in front of it. Elliot and E.T. on a flying bicycle. Letters ripple into view. Amblin Entertainment. This motion picture has been rated G, General Audiences, All Ages Admitted, by the Classification and Rating Administration Motion Picture Association of America.